Good evening, Gills fans, and welcome back to Gills in the Blood TV for the second part of our Twitter question and answer session. As you can see, I am on my own tonight. Unfortunately, Boz is unavailable due to night work, so we will crack straight on with the remainder of these questions that we didn't get through yesterday. First up is Matt Lawrence, or Gills Mod, who asks, should the fans stop all the negativity and call him for AD to go when he knows this is not going to happen and just wait for next season? In an ideal world, Matt, yeah, I suppose they should. They should all get behind the gaffer, behind his assistant and his coaching team and the players. But it's not a perfect world, unfortunately. And in terms of performances and results, I think it's a two-way street. We have to support the players and the coaching staff, etc. But they have to give us something to shout about and give us a reason for them to be supported. And unfortunately, this season we've not had enough of that. I'm all for constructive criticism, etc. But let's do it after the game. I don't agree with booing and berating in the ground while the game's going on, because that doesn't help anybody. Prime example was the other week when Rory Donnelly got substituted and that his exit was cheered, which isn't beneficial to anyone. I don't agree with that, but it's a results business. AD and his team are not getting enough good results at the moment, so you can understand why fans are getting the ump and being negative or anything like that. It's not been good enough, and like I say, it's a two-way street. Give us something to cheer about and we'll cheer, obviously. If you don't, then you have to expect the fact that we're going to maybe get the ump a little bit and criticise, berate, slate, whatever you want to call it. Next up is Ryan White, who asks, ahead of this weekend's game versus Peterborough, what changes do need to be made to the team? I tweeted this morning, actually, Ryan. That's quite a coincidence. If we have everybody fit for Saturday, I would go back to 4-5-1, or whatever you want to call it, 4-2-3-1. I would play Stuart Nelson in goal. If everyone's fit, I would play a back four of Mitchell Dickinson, Max Amar, Deji Osalaja and Ryan Jackson. In front of that, I would have Josh Wright and Mark Byrne. I would have wingers in place, and they would be Lee Martin from the left and Scott Wagstaff from the right. And I would have Bradley Dack behind Josh Parker. Nothing against Cody. He's done well in the last few weeks, but I think Josh Parker should hopefully be confident from his goal last weekend. I don't think he's done a lot wrong since he's been at the club. Scored a couple of goals, seems to put himself about. And in terms of pace, I think he has a little bit more than Cody, so I'll be entitled to go with him and try and stretch Peterborough's back four. Obviously, this lineup depends on people returning from injury, etc. So it may be completely different, but that would be my suggested 11 if everyone was available. Ali Gills, who do you think has improved most this season? Trying to be positive. Cheers, Ali. There ain't many, if any at all, to be fair. I suppose in the second half of the season you'd have to say Josh Wright in terms of his goal scoring and his output. Since he's had the captaincy taken away from him by AD, he's flourished in a centre midfield role. He's played with the shackles off a little bit, with the handbrake off, so to speak. He's been allowed to bomb on and get in the opposition box. Obviously that culminated in that mad hat-trick a couple of weeks ago at home to Scunthorpe. So yeah, I think I'd plump for Josh Wright. You could look at youngsters, I suppose. Darren Oldaker's been involved in the first team. Mitchell Dickinson more recently. Greg Cundall. They've made the step up, but I don't know whether you class that as improvement. But in terms of first team regulars, I'll stick with Josh Wright. Thank you, mate. Harry Beadle, providing we stay up, does the club need a complete change, staff, players, etc., or just tweaking, i.e. new manager, few new players? I think, like we've said in previous questions and previous answers, how it all depends on what division we're in terms of a playing staff next season and a coach and coaching staff, and budget will obviously have a lot to do with it. I was thinking about this again today in terms of who's available. I think Henry Collier asked us last night in part one of who would you be happy in the current squad to start the first game of next season. Looking at it, I'd be inclined to have a proper look at Thomas Hadler and Thomas Holy in terms of goalkeeping next season. Bradley Garmston, if we can get him fit, could be a very good left back. Centre backs, right back, I'm not really sure. I think it could depend on what division. None of them have set the world alight. Aaron Morris, I'd love him to be fit and firing on all cylinders, because I think he's a very, very good footballer at this level. You could play him alongside Josh Wright, Lee Martin and Scott Wagstaff. If we can keep them fully fit, I think it'd be an asset, especially in League One. Bradley Dack, obviously, if he's at his best, but I think we might sell him in the summer, to be quite honest. That's just my personal opinion. But then for me, that gives another opportunity to Billy Knott, who's not really had a fair crack at the whip, in my opinion. You could play him in a number 10 role. Up front, I'm still not sure. I'd give Cody a new contract, definitely, but I'm not sure whether I'd plump for him to start the first game. So yeah, there's plenty of people that I'd like to keep, but that's only sort of half a dozen that I'd say, yeah, I'd be willing to see them in the first team. So I think in terms of player turnover, you might be looking at, I think plenty that are out of contract could go, to be honest, and whoever's there, whether it's AD or someone else that comes in at the end of this campaign, will try and bring in a lot of their own players and characters. And there's even talk of Paul Scully potentially selling the club after his heart scare, so it's I think it might be a case of watch this space, to be quite honest, Harry, mate. But I think at this level you get plenty of turnover all the time, but there's not, I think people have got 7 games to potentially play for their future, especially them ones that are out of contract come May. So we'll just have to wait and see. Ben Bradley, lots are saying AD Pennock is out of his depth. What could have been done different tactically? Brackets, Lee Martin at left wing back v Bolton would have been worse. I have to disagree with that last bit there, Ben, if I've read it right, because I don't understand why AD Pennock keeps playing Lee Martin from the right. He's naturally left-footed, he's got 2 good feet, so if you put him on his natural side, he can get on the outside, but he's good enough to drop the shoulder from time to time and cut in onto his right foot, which gives the fullback a problem then, because he doesn't know which way to turn or which way to show Lee Martin. By playing him from the right, I think it makes it too easy for the left-back, left wing-back, whoever he's up against, because they just show him on the outside all the time because they know that that's his weaker foot. In terms of what could have been done different tactically overall, there's a case to say that AD wanted to play wingers when he first arrived. That happened for what, a game and a half, and then he's now saying that he's been railroaded into playing 3-5-2 because he doesn't have the correct players. Well, you released our only fit left back, senior left back in Paul Konchesky, knowing that Bradley Garmston was injury prone, so that probably wasn't your best decision. And then that leaves us with our hands tied, because we can only really play one system. We're playing Ollie Muldoon in the last 2 games, who was a right back and a centre midfielder in the trial game that got him a deal, and we've played him left wing back for the last 2, so I think you're hanging him out to dry. Obviously, from time to time, in terms of injuries and suspensions, you have to have players slightly out of position. That's part and parcel of the modern game. But I don't think AD's helped himself a great deal, unfortunately, mate. But we're just going to have to stick with it for the last 7 games because there's no one else coming in. Next question comes from Andrew J. Milbank. And Andrew asks, AD keeps blaming the players, saying they aren't doing their jobs correctly. Should he take the blame for the losses? Yeah, of course he should, Andrew. I think they all have to take the blame. At the end of the day, the players are responsible once they cross that white line to go out and do a job properly. But who's coaching them all week and who's guiding them from the touchline in the dressing room on a Saturday or a Tuesday? That's AD Pennock. I'm not saying it's all his fault. I'm not saying it's just the players' fault, but unfortunately, in terms of AD at the moment, he seems to be going down the route similar to Justin did towards the end of his reign with this, he keeps contradicting himself a little bit. Like on last Friday's press conference, he said he wasn't going to dig out individuals or the team collectively because he thought that it was imperative that the team spirit remained high. And then come Saturday, we've been beaten 4-1, and then it gets released in the press on Sunday or Monday in the paper that AD's labelled them defensively a shambles, and the under 12 could defend better. So again, that sounds like slating them in the press and slating them publicly, which is the complete opposite of what he said he wouldn't do. nobody's done their job properly all season, I think, is the bottom line. In terms of Justin got it wrong. Paul Scally, you can say, probably got it wrong in terms of the appointment, a replacement. Nothing against Adi Pennock, who wouldn't have taken the job when you're an ex-Gillingham legend as a player. But there's a document that's come out today, I think, from Paul Scally, and he basically says that after his heart surgery, he effectively couldn't be bothered to go through the process of interviewing people. So he went with Adi Pennock, Jamie Day and Steve Lovell. To me, it smacks of jobs for your mates and all that, and friends reunited a little bit, but again, we're stuck with it till the end of the season at least. So Justin got it wrong to start with. He got sacked. Paul Scally, I think, has got it wrong in terms of not going after bigger names that were available at the time and settling for second best and going down the little old Gillingham route. Adi's got plenty wrong since he's been on board, and the players have been collectively pretty shocking for pretty much the whole season, so everyone has to take blame. Next up is a question from Italian Jill. Do you think we'll go into the Northampton game needing something to stay up? I hope not, mate, I really do, because I think it'll be written in the stars if we need something to avoid relegation that Justin will send us down to League Two, unfortunately. But then I said yesterday in our Monday review piece that I think it was that if we lose to Peterborough on Saturday, I think we'll get relegated. I think that represents our best chance of a win at home, especially with the other three games being Fleetwood, Millwall and Bristol Rovers are all on pretty good form and in and around the playoffs or automatic promotion. Away from home, we're in absolute shambles on the whole. We play MK Dons, Charlton and Northampton, as we just mentioned, and I think we could invariably lose all of them. So 3 points Saturday's imperative, that gets us to 48, and then if we can pinch another win or 3 draws in the last 3 home games, or by some miracle one in an away game, we might just have enough to scrape to safety by the skin of our teeth. But I certainly wouldn't want to be going to Northampton on the final day needing something. Right, next question, Liam Taylor. Try not to laugh. It says, who is your player of the year? Cheers, Liam. This is similar to Ali Gills' question. I think, who's improved the most. A few people beginning of the season, I myself included, going back a few months, were saying Max Hamer. I thought he was the best of a bad bunch, but in the last few weeks, and certainly since Adi's come in and he's taken the captaincy, he's been absolutely horrendous. It doesn't look anything like the player that we saw on loan originally in 2014-15 and the player that we had last season. He's gone backwards for me. He's not a captain. I think the goals that he scored in certain games are glossing over his poor defensive performances. There's not really anyone that stands out, is there, unfortunately? If you go from front to back, back to front, either way. I'm really not sure, mate. I'm really struggling. Josh Wright for his goals, perhaps. He's flourished since Adi come in, but that's over 15 games, not a season. But then, has anyone really done enough over the period of the whole season to justify being player of the year? That's all I've got. Sorry. David O'Hagan, assuming we stay up, how many players will it take to make us competitive? I know the answer is more than we'll get. I think I've just touched on this in a previous question, mate, to be honest. Let me just grab it back. Yeah, I think Harry Beadle asked something similar about how much turnover will we need and will there be a complete change at the club. I think generally at this level you tend to sort of turn over 6 or 7 every season, bringing them in. You lose a few. Could depend on whether we sell Bradley Dack. That may give us funds to bring in extra. Again, it will depend on what division we're in. That'll have a bearing on the budget. But looking at it, I think Stuart Nelson will start to be faded out. If we're in League One, we need at least 1 right back, probably 2 centre backs, 2 left backs potentially, because Bradley Garnston's injury prone. If we can get Aaron Morris fit, then we might be all right centre midfield, because we'd have him and Josh Wright, Jake Essensala, Mark Byrne, Emmanuel Osadebe, but then some of them might be released. So from the right, you've got sort of people like Scott Wagstaff and Elliot List, but we need characters, don't we? Not just people that are technically good and look pretty with a football. There need to be people that can dig in when we're not playing well and we're struggling, and we've certainly not had enough of that this season, and from probably Christmas onwards last season. I'd say at least half a dozen really good footballers and really good characters, proper footballers, proper men. David. Steve Douglas is next, and he asks, what's your views on our chairman? I will always stick up for Paul Scully to a degree, based on the fact that we probably wouldn't be in existence if he hadn't bought the club back in the mid-1990s. But before a lot of the younger fans jump on me, accuse me of living in the past and not in the here and now, that was 20 years ago, 20 odd years ago. So we have to look at what's happening at the moment. And based on the document that he's released in the last couple of hours, he's gone for the cheap option again, which is really frustrating in terms of appointing Adi Pennock, and he's basically admitted that by coming out tonight and saying after his heart problems he couldn't be bothered to try and recruit, he couldn't be bothered to go through an interview process, so he trusted the three coaches that are in the club at the moment, and he has full trust in them moving forward. So does that indicate that they're going to be there next season regardless? In terms of the budget that he gave Justin Edinburgh this year, you can't really fault him for that. And I suppose you can say, that at least he's trying to keep us fans in the loop with this document being published tonight. But I just get fed up with this little Gillingham approach and settling for second best, it seems. We were 8 points off the playoffs when Justin Edinburgh was fired, with about half a season to go, and people like Steve Cotterill and Kenny Jackett, Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank, Chris Powell were all available. But instead of going out on a limb to try and get one of them in, we settled for what I've already labelled as effectively giving your mate a job and friends reunited, it seems, and it's really, really annoying. Paul Scully's done plenty of very good things for this football club, but there's still plenty that he does that does frustrate me, and I'm sure many others. Next question comes from SJ, Big Sammy J. What odds on Paul Scully selling up do you think we need to so we can push on as a club? Based on this said document that I've just spoken about, Sammy, I don't think he's going to sell up. There seems to be a lot in there regarding future plans, stadium plans, etc. And he's also mentioned that he's not going anywhere and he's still desperate to achieve that dream of getting Gillingham Football Club into the Premier League. Can I see it? Probably not. Being realistic, we've had talk about a new stadium for donkey's years now, for probably as long as we've had a temporary stand for away fans. That's been there since 2002, I think it is. So, like with anything that we talk about regarding managers, coaches, players and what they say, talk is cheap at the end of the day, until we see things happening on the pitch, off the pitch in terms of development, then it means absolutely nothing. But my honest answer to your question, no, I don't think Paul Scully will set up anytime soon. Zach Garrett asked me starting 11 Saturday. I've already touched on that, Zach. I said if everyone was available, I'll run through it again quickly for you, mate. I'd go Stuart Nelson in goal. I'd have a flat back four of Mitchell Dickinson, Max Amar, Deji Osalaja and Ryan Jackson. I would play two holding midfielders, Mark Byrne and Josh Wright. In front of him, I would have three, Lee Martin, Scott Wagstaff from the sides, and I'd have Bradley Dack behind Josh Parker, mate. I just think we need to freshen things up a little bit, get back to two banks of four or a 4 and a 5 and make ourselves difficult to beat. If we keep a clean sheet, we've got a good chance of winning the game, and we certainly don't lose it, so that would be my choice. James Kerwood was next. Do you think Billy Knott has a future at Gillingham Football Club? Yes, I do, James, and I sincerely hope that he does get a fair crack of the whip next season. He's not been given a real chance for me. I think he was sold the club on the premise that Bradley Dack was going to be leaving in the summer of 2016 and that he'd be able to play in the number 10 role. Unfortunately or fortunately, whichever way you want to look at it, Bradley Dack stayed, and Billy Knott was unfortunately the one that seemed to keep missing out, hence his loan move to Lincoln City. But hopefully we'll get him back in the summer and he can have a good pre-season. I, for one, think we might sell Bradley Dack come the end of the season. and I think that'd give Billy Knott a great chance to try and make that number 10 role his own. So yes, I do think he has, and I do hope he has a future at Gillingham Football Club. Louis Hart at GFC Louis asks, as attendances have not been amazing this season, do you think season ticket prices and general ticket prices should be lowered? Yes, of course I do, Louis. I don't want to spend that much. No, seriously, in terms of season tickets and ticket prices on the whole, I don't think they're great in terms of what benefits they give to season ticket holders. There's obviously a tweet going around at the moment for this Saturday that season ticket holders can get 2 kids tickets for free this week. That's great if you've got children or take your kids. Doesn't help me though, I don't get in on a kids ticket. Why not give vouchers for season ticket holders, or I don't know, buy a season ticket, get half price replica shirt for next season, or 5 free beer vouchers or something, just something to go, thanks very much. It seems that we spend, as adults, I spend £380, £390 on a season ticket, and the only people that benefit from that, all right, I know I get a slight discount in terms of what tickets would be on the day, but it's still a lot to shell out in one go. But we don't tend to get anything in terms of a deal or any bonuses throughout the season, so to speak. So it'd be lovely if season ticket prices were lowered or at least frozen. I know Paul Scally tends to do the early bird sort of offer where if you order it before a certain time you get it cheaper, but that's really early on in pre-season. A lot of people are still trying to save up, so I think there's plenty more they could do in terms of benefits for season ticket holders and those that spend a lot of money on tickets generally for games. Brad Fox is next. Quite blunt and quite simple. What even is Chris Hurd? Brad, I don't know if you saw my rant or excited discussion about Chris Hurd the other week. I don't like digging players out for the sake of it, and I try not to. I try to back it up. For me, he's a liability, unfortunately. He's overweight, he's not fit, he's got a dodgy knee. He started 13 games up until Scunthorpe. We'd not won any of them. He had nothing to do with the victory over Scunthorpe because obviously all the goals were scored in the second half, and he'd gone off injured at half time after having an absolute nightmare. Justin, I think, said he was a defensive midfielder when he came in. He's hardly played there. He's been pretty much a disaster for me. Yeah, that's all I got. For me, he gets released at the end of the season regardless of how the next 7 games go. Luke Naylor, 94. Given the current injury situation, should we really have let Paul Konchesky go? No, we shouldn't have, Luke, I don't think. Again, I've already touched on it in previous questions. AD goes on about how he's hindered and has his arms tied in terms of formations. Well, yeah, you brought that on yourself though, AD. Bradley Garnston's been injured pretty much all of the season. You said you wanted to play a flat back 4 and wingers and go back to a 4-4-2 or a 4-4-1-1 when you arrived. You've ended up with Ryan Jackson, who's a right back, stroke right wing back, playing at centre half. We've ended up with Deji Osalada, who's a centre back, playing at left back and right wing back. We've ended up with Ollie Muldoon, who you brought to the club after playing in a trial game at right back and centre midfield. You played him as a left wing back in the last 2 games, and you got rid of Paul Konchesky, who, despite, and I said I don't think he had a very good season. I thought he was average at best, and I thought his legs had gone. But sure, it's better than nothing. It's better than no player in that position at all. That left you with like a 16-year-old Aaron Simpson, I think. And I think he got injured in a kids' game as well, so absolutely nothing there. Should definitely have kept him on until the end of the season. Marky G, Gills 1979. What do you suggest could be done to get more interested in the club? Goes back to the season ticket things. I think you've got to have more benefits for people that are shelling out money. Other than that, I'm not a marketing man, Mark. Free tickets, we do that. But I think we've got to do more. Bottom line is we've got to do more to reward those that spend a lot of money every single season, whether that's spending on season tickets, spending money in the club shop, spending money in the factory, spending money on travelling to lots of away games. There's got to be more to be done for those that are there every single week through thick and a lot of thin this season. And bottom line is, what can we do to get more people more interested, win more football matches? Last question is another one from Bristol Rovers Poles, who asked us one last night as well in part 1. Who do you consider your biggest rivals? We don't really have one geographically, do we? Let's be honest, we're the only league team in Kent. We tend to sort of cling on to Charlton and Swindon and Millwall. Swindon's a historical thing due to something that happened years ago, but geographically it's not a local rivalry. Millwall, Charlton, maybe Southend to a degree because they're not that far away in terms of mileage, but we don't really have a proper local rival. It used to be Maidstone historically when they were in the Football League before they went bust, bless them. So yeah, I suppose it'd have to be the teams we mentioned, so Swindon, Millwall, Charlton and Southend, but they're not geographically local rivals at all. It's just born out of matches throughout the years. Right, that is us done this evening. That is part 2 finished. Thanks for everyone who sent questions in. I hope I'm not going to bore you too much rabbiting on. Please keep liking, retweeting, sharing the page, telling your mates, all Gills fans, subscribing. It's really appreciated. We're over 130 now, which is brilliant. We'll try and do a piece once I've digested Paul Scally's document in more detail, and then after that, obviously this week we've got AD's press conference and Peterborough match preview due, and then there'll be a match day live on Saturday. And until next time, up the Gills.